Hi everyone, my name is Cassandra, and today I'm going to talk to you about my experience with chronic migraines as well as my experience with chronic pain from them. I do want to say just before we start that I am only speaking from my own experience. I'm not speaking from the experience of others, and everybody's journey is individual. So just making sure that we note that before heading on into it. So today I wanted to start off by telling you when I got my first migraine. So I actually got my first migraine when I was about 10 years old. I was still at school, so I would have been in about grade 5. And I noticed that I had paresthesia or numbness and tingling all on unilaterally on my left side. So this was really abnormal for me. I had never had it before. And I remember thinking, what is going on? I was really scared. I was kind of terrified, if I'm being honest. And I got home after school that day and I told my mom. And at that point, I had a really bad headache as well. So not thinking that it could have been a migraine, not even perceiving that kids that young get them, we went into the emergency room at the Children's Hospital, and little to my knowledge beforehand, a physician did an assessment on me, and we actually found out that I also couldn't see out of my left side of my visual field. So that was also another component of the neurological symptoms that I was experiencing. So that went on for about 12 hours, both the headache pain as well as the neurological complications with it. So after about 12 hours, they were really concerned that I was actually experiencing a stroke because of the visual component, and they really wanted to ensure that we ruled it out. So luckily I had a CT, everything was fine, it was ruled out. I'm very fortunate that I was not having a stroke. However, at the same time, they did diagnose me with traditional complex migraines. So I was about 10 when I got diagnosed, that means. And since then, I've had a lot of fluctuations herein with how often I'm getting my migraines. There would be often years where I would get at least 5 migraines a week, or I would have ones where I got them every day, and it was fluctuated a lot. It made it really hard for me to actually do my daily activities because I constantly had this pain going on. So apart from that and that fluctuation, which honestly I still experience a lot to this day, I rarely go more than 7 days without quote unquote migraine, where I either have photophobia, auditory sensitivity, or another kind of neurological complication with it. So moving forward, as after I was diagnosed, I also started experiencing these really odd abdominal pain episodes. So I would be in severe abdominal pain. And of course it was lower right-hand quadrant. And what does everyone think when they hear lower right-hand quadrant abdominal pain with vomiting? They automatically thought it was my appendix. So every single time I would go into emergency, I would then be treated and they would do all the diagnostic imaging for appendicitis, but it never ended up being appendicitis. So after a few years and months, months then years of my abdominal episodes, they still didn't know what was happening. And at this point, they ruled out appendicitis multiple times. And they also even thought at one point it was an abscess because they looked so incredibly ill. And I also just want to note that sometimes when I was having these episodes, I would literally wake up from sleep vomiting. So I had no control over the episodes of when I was vomiting, etc. So this was happening all in the time frame when I was a teenager. And this is really important because when you're a teenager and you are in your development, everything's complicated. You don't necessarily know who you are yet or who you're going to be, and you're just trying to navigate things. So when people say things to you, it has a really profound and prolonged impact on you. And going through that and having multiple healthcare providers just throughout the years say to me that I was either bulimic. I had that a lot, to the point where they would say that to my mom and my dad. And it really affected my self-esteem because I was somebody that wanted to be at school because they thought I was just attention seeking, or that I wanted the pain medication and I didn't want to go to school, and I had all of these other reasons, and it was all psychological, that there was no physical component behind the pain I was experiencing. That was really difficult because I was somebody that wanted to go to school. I loved school. I loved being able to go out and hang out with my friends, and I really loved the outdoors. So I couldn't do that because I was scared that I would get a migraine and I would actually end up being incapacitated to the point where vomiting, and the point where everybody else was worried about me. So it really limited me in that way. So when somebody then said that I was faking it or that I was bulimic and I was just making up all of my symptoms, it really hurt my self-esteem to the point where it still impacts me to this day. And I struggle with that component of it. And like, it was so bad. I just want to like explain to you that it was so bad that there was a time when I remember literally being curled up on the bathroom floor in a hospital room at the Alberta Children's Hospital. And I remember saying to my mom, like, if you weren't here, I would want to die. The pain is so bad. And I think it was about 14 or 15 at the time. So for a 14 or 15-year-old to just want the pain to go away shows you how incredibly difficult that entire experience was and how real my pain was. And I understand that here right now, you see me, I don't have a migraine today. I'm really fortunate that I don't have a migraine today, but it's completely different when I'm experiencing an episode. So apart from that experience and the judgment and assumptions that were made about who I was and why I had this pain and what was going on with me personally, I also had a physician that really listened to me. So because of my abdominal stuff, they actually sent me to the GI clinic at the Alberta Children's, and I was followed by a physician there. And after years of not knowing what was going on, not understanding what the underlying cause was that connected all of these different pieces that gave me more pain, gave me these migraines, gave me this abdominal pain, I went to see a physician with my mom who had previously done a lot of research because she was also desperate for answers as well as I was. And we came to the doctor's appointment. We brought our research. We were hoping maybe he'll listen to us because we'd been to quite a few beforehand that just honestly were very dismissive and thought that it wasn't going to be this cause, that it would be very rare for it to be this cause, and they didn't want to look further into it. But when we presented it to him, he just said, you know what, that's reasonable. And those words changed my life. He was able to diagnose me with an underlying mitochondrial condition, which was the cause for what we found out were actually abdominal migraines. So significantly more rare in a population to have these abdominal migraines, as well as these complex migraines that are the traditional headache pain. I was having both. So everything came full circle and we were able to understand why I was experiencing this pain. What was the underlying cause? There was a physiological reason behind it, which was huge. I now had a label, and through a diagnosis, the way I was treated within the system by multiple healthcare professionals. It wasn't just a singular healthcare professional. It wasn't only nurses. It wasn't only physicians. It wasn't social workers or OTs or physios. It was all of them. But I would go in and they wouldn't actually have a preconceived notion of who I was and what I was experiencing. So they were able to look at my chart, and instead of making these assumptions, they went forward and they go, oh, okay, yeah, like she has this mitochondrial thing. So they automatically believed the pain I was in. They were no longer questioning, was it real? Was it not real? They automatically thought it was. And this was huge for me. Absolutely huge. It changed how I feel in the healthcare system. It changed my interactions with a ton of healthcare providers. And in the end, I just want people to realize that it was the label that changed me, not who I was that changed. So this diagnosis changed a lot of things in a positive way, yes. And granted, being labeled bulimic previously had a very negative connotation with how I was treated. But the way of that label and that physiological underlying reason that people were able to identify really did change their perception of me. So other than them believing that and having that physician that really actively listened and took the time to consider what we brought, that was amazing. I owe him so much. And this is something that I really hope that you can also take from this presentation, is sometimes just listening to your patient and looking if they've done a lot of research, because really they're incredibly invested in figuring out why they're in this pain as well. Taking the time to listen, consider, and work with them to figure out what could be happening is one of the best things you can do as a physician for somebody in pain. Again, I also had a surgeon when they thought it was appendicitis. I was often consulted by surgery. But one thing this singular surgeon, did that stood out to me was she just sat on my bed in I think it was the Alberta Children's, like unit 4, I believe it was, if I remember correctly. She just sat on my bed and she took a deep breath and she said to me, you know what? I'm really sorry that I can't do anything else to help you. I really wish I could. And in that moment, she showed me so much compassion that I was honestly craving from my healthcare team. I really wanted to see that they saw that I was in this pain. They believed that I was in this pain and they wanted to do something to help me. And it wasn't just, you're another patient, that I look at their chart and I see the paper. They actually saw, and I felt like she saw me through giving me that compassion and empathy through those simple words. Also, I've been really fortunate with a lot of my physicians to have them want to quote unquote work in partnership with me. So they don't just give me a one size fits all treatment plan. They'll sit with me and they'll say, okay, what can we do that works for you and works for your lifestyle? How is this going to affect you long term, short term? Instead of just saying, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do and it's going to help you, they took the time to listen, figure out what was going on, and then work in partnership with me. It was a two-way street. I didn't just get thrown information. They also took the information from me and considered it to then work with me to create these plans for long-term success. And so now pivoting a little bit, I also just wanted to say before we get into this next part that in the end, as a healthcare provider, you only see a snapshot of that person's life. So I believe there was a social media component prior to this. And similarly to Facebook and Instagram, you see the highlight reel. It's a snapshot in time. It's not the entire patient. You see their highs, but you also might only see their lows. So unless you're able to see the entire movie and the picture of what's happening in their life, just remember that you're only seeing a certain component of it and not the entire thing. And it's really easy to judge one picture, one snapshot, when you don't have the full story. And now for the coping mechanisms I use. I know we're changing gears a little bit here, but I do want to say again, like I said previously, your coping mechanisms are individualized to you. So these are what work for me. I'm not saying they're going to work for you, but working through them and taking the time to try different ones was essential to me finding these key ones I'm going to share with you that have helped me personally. So one thing that has worked, which much to my surprise, if you'd asked 14-year-old me if I would be saying this, like at 22, I would have said, no way, Jose, you're going crackers. Like, I don't know what's happening, but it's exercise. 14-year-old me, my mom dragged my butt out of the house. She would say, okay, you're running for a minute. I'd run, well, I'd quickly walk, if I'm being honest, for a minute. And then I would walk for a minute, and then I would run for a minute, and I'd walk for a minute. So I hated exercise, and now I crave exercise. So I've done this complete shift, and I love exercising. It's something I look forward to. But again, if I have a migraine, I can't exercise. It makes it worse for me personally. It might not for you, but personally for my migraines, it does make it worse. So I do that when I'm not experiencing a migraine to help me prevent my migraines long term. And my choice of exercise, it's running or weights, and sometimes it's high intensity interval training too, or even just walking my dog. So it's a whole bunch of different things. Also, looking at my diet, I have really worked towards having like an 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time I'm really healthy, and 20% of the time I really have a sweet tooth. So I let myself indulge sometimes, especially with cookies. Like they're my absolute like arch nemesis because I will eat them if they're in front of me. And just having the balance there as well. Having no MSG, I've noted that that's a trigger, so I keep away from that. I also make sure I have a regular sleep schedule. Being a student that's really busy, I have a planner because otherwise I get overwhelmed. So having a planner and just jotting down things that I need keeps me really organized and helps me cope that way as well. Last but not least, just having some compassion for myself. It's really important to have compassion from other people, but it's also just as important to be compassionate towards yourself. It's something I honestly am still working towards. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I do it perfectly because I don't. That would be a lie. But be who you are to yourself as you would be to a friend. So sometimes you're not able to do all your activities or everything on your to-do list, and that's okay. Your migraine can get in the way of it. Your pain can get in the way of it, but just being kind to yourself and saying, you know what, I'll do it another day, that's also okay. So that kind of comes to the end of everything for me. A few things I want you to remember is be kind and compassionate, listen to your patients, figure out what works with your patients, not for your patients, with them. And last but not least, don't make assumptions or judge your patients. Make sure you take care of their body and their mind. And that's everything from me. So if anyone else has any questions, I will be attending the question and answer period afterwards. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.